Listen, when your boss shows up at your apartment door at 5 o'clock in the morning, tears streaming down her face, you know the world as you understand it is about to shift. But I had no idea just how much my life was about to flip upside down. To explain it, I have to take you back to that night, because the story doesn't start with a kiss or a handshake. It starts in the dark, in the quiet, in a moment I will never, ever forget. The sound came at exactly 5:03 a.m. It wasn't a soft tap. It wasn't a polite neighborly knock. It was 3 hard, desperate bangs that cut through the silence like a knife. I shot up in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I could feel the pulse in my throat. For a few seconds, I just sat there in the pitch black, every muscle in my body coiled and tight. Nothing good ever happens at 5 in the morning. That's the only thought playing on a loop in my mind as I threw off the heavy blankets and stumbled toward the bedroom door. I live alone in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Portland. It's nothing fancy, just a place I can afford on a senior accountant's salary. The floors creak, the heater rattles, and the second bedroom is basically a graveyard for boxes I've never had the heart to unpack. After my engagement fell apart 3 years ago, I had learned to love the quiet. No drama, no surprises. Just me, my routine, and the safety of solitude. So, when someone started pounding on my door before the sun had even thought about rising, my first instinct was fear. The knocking came again. Harder this time. More frantic. "I'm coming!" I called out, my voice rough with sleep. I was wearing nothing but an old, faded t-shirt and sweatpants. My hair was sticking up in every direction. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway lighting in our building has always been terrible. Flickering, yellow, and dim. I could see a figure, but I couldn't make out a face. "Who is it?" I asked through the wood, my hand hovering over the deadbolt but not turning it. Every survival instinct was screaming at me to be careful. This is a city. Strange visitors at dawn usually mean trouble. There was a long pause on the other side, and then a voice I knew. A voice I heard every day, though I had never, ever heard it sound like this. Shaky. Broken. Barely holding the syllables together. My brain just stopped. Adriana, as in Adriana Castellano, as in my boss, the CEO of the entire company I work for. The woman whose signature is printed on the bottom of my paychecks. The woman who runs board meetings like a general commanding an army. That Adriana was standing outside my cheap apartment door in the dark. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. What I saw made me forget about the time, the impropriety, the strangeness. Everything. The woman standing in my hallway looked nothing like the powerful executive I saw at the office. Her red hair, usually styled into a sleek, impenetrable armor, was pulled into a messy bun that was falling apart, strands loose and wild. Dark streaks of mascara ran down her cheeks like war paint gone wrong. But it was her eyes that really got me. Those sharp, brown eyes that could scan a financial report and spot $1 million error in seconds. They looked empty, lost, like she had been crying for hours and had finally run out of tears to shed. "Adriana," I said, too shocked to remember to call her Miss Castellano. "What happened? Are you okay?" She didn't answer right away. She just stared at me, her chest heaving slightly. I realized she was taking in my appearance. My messy hair, the wrinkled clothes, the warm, yellow glow of the lamp I'd clicked on in the living room. Her eyes moved past me, landing on the photos hanging on my wall. Pictures of me and my brother. a shot of the Oregon coast. Simple things. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper, fragile as glass. "Can I come in?" Now, every logical part of my brain started shouting warnings. This was the CEO. Inviting her into my home at dawn was insane. It could lead to awkward questions, HR investigations, rumors, maybe even losing the job I worked so hard to keep. What if this was a test? What if someone saw her? But looking at her face, at the raw, unfiltered pain radiating off her, I couldn't say no. Something in me, some part that had nothing to do with careers or logic, made me step aside. "Of course," I said softly. "Come in." She walked past me, and I caught the scent of her. Expensive perfume, jasmine and sandalwood, mixed with something sharp, alcohol, wine, maybe champagne. She moved into my living room with careful, hesitant steps, so different from the confident stride she used in the corporate corridors. She stopped in the center of my small space, looking around like she had crash-landed on a different planet. My furniture is all secondhand, clean but worn. A basket of laundry sat on the couch because I'd fallen asleep before folding it. I closed the front door softly and followed her, suddenly painfully aware of how small my life must look to someone who probably lived in a glass penthouse downtown. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly, turning to face me. "I shouldn't be here. I don't know what I was thinking. This is completely inappropriate. I should go." She turned back toward the door, panic rising in her voice. But I moved into her path without thinking. "Adriana, wait." I kept my voice gentle, the same tone I used to use when my ex-fiancé would come home spiraling from stress. "You came here for a reason. You don't have to leave. Just breathe. Talk to me." She stared at me, and for a terrifying second, I thought she might bolt. Then, the strings holding her up seemed to cut. Her shoulders sagged. Her expensive heels slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a soft thud. "I had a date tonight," she said. And then she laughed. It was a horrible sound, bitter, jagged. God, that sounds so stupid when I say it out loud. I'm 43 years old, running a multi-million-dollar company, and I'm crying about a bad date like a teenager. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the couch. "Please, let me make some coffee." To my surprise, she listened. Adriana Castellano, who gave orders to 300 employees, sat down on my beige, second-hand couch. She perched on the edge of the cushion, her back straight, like she couldn't quite let go of being in control. Chero 800 1500. The coffee and the confession, I moved into my small kitchen, grateful for something to do with my hands. Through the open doorway, I could see her sitting there, head in her hands. The coffee machine was old and loud, gurgling and hissing, filling the silence with familiar, comforting sounds. I'd bought this machine at a thrift store right after everything fell apart with Jennifer, my ex. She'd left me because she said I had no ambition. She said I was content being average. 3 years later, here I was, using the same cheap machine, living in the same modest apartment. Maybe she'd been right. "How do you take it?" I called out softly. "Black." "2 sugars," Adriana answered. Her voice was steadier now. I brought 2 mugs back to the living room. I handed her one and sat in the armchair across from her. Not too close. Not presuming anything, just present. She wrapped both hands around the mug like she was freezing, even though it was a mild night. She took a sip and closed her eyes. "This is good coffee," she murmured. "Grocery store brand," I replied with a small smile. "Nothing fancy." She opened her eyes and looked at me, really looked at me, and I felt the air in the room shift. The dynamic changed from boss and employee to just two people in a room. His name was Gregory Hamilton, she said suddenly, VP at an investment firm. We met at a charity gala 3 months ago, right after my divorce was finalized. He seemed nice, charming. He asked me to dinner. I stayed quiet. Sometimes people don't need advice. They just need a witness. We went to this French restaurant downtown, the kind where you need reservations 6 months in advance. He picked it to impress me, and he spent the entire dinner talking about himself, his portfolio, his connections, his opinions on tech stocks. Every time I tried to speak, he'd nod, smile, and talk right over me, like I was a painting on the wall, nice to look at, but not really there. I could picture it perfectly, the expensive suit, the ego, the total lack of awareness. Then, she continued, her voice dropping. For dessert, he leaned in close. He said, Adriana, I really admire ambitious women. It's attractive. But a man still needs to feel like a man. You know what I mean. My jaw tightened. I told him I didn't know what he meant, she said. So he explained it. He said that in a relationship, maybe we could agree that he would handle the big decisions, and I could handle everything else, you know, so I didn't have to worry my pretty little head about important things. He didn't, I said, disbelief coloring my tone. He did. She smiled, but it was devoid of humor. And do you know what I did? I didn't throw my wine. I didn't scream. I calmly set down my fork, told him our evening was over, paid for my own meal, and walked out. Professional, controlled, just like always. Good for you, I said firmly. Eyes it. Tears welled in her eyes again, because I sat in my car for 30 minutes, and all I could think was that Gregory is the 5th man this year who has made me feel like I am too much. Too successful. Too opinionated. Too independent. My ex-husband said the same thing. That I was married to the company. That I was too much of a woman. Her voice cracked, spilling the truth she'd been hiding. Maybe they're right. Maybe I've built this whole life, this empire, and lost everything that actually matters along the way. That's not true, I said. How would you know? She snapped. It was sharp, defensive. I didn't flinch. I know, because anyone who tells you you're too much is really just saying that you are more than they can handle. That is their deficiency, Adriana. Not yours. She looked at me stunned. The defensive wall crumbled. How do you do that? She whispered. Do what? Say the right thing. You've been doing it since I got here. No judgment. No weirdness. Just steady. I shrugged, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. I guess I just try to treat people like people. Not like titles. Just humans having a bad day. A 1500 to 2000 research. The real connection. Tell me about you, she said, sitting up straighter. I know you work in accounting. I know you've been with us for 4 years. But I don't know you. Tell me something real. Why are you living here? You have an engineering degree. I saw your file. You looked at my file. I look at everyone's file, she admitted. But yours stuck with me. You had potential. You stopped climbing. Why? I took a deep breath. It was my turn to be vulnerable. I was engaged 3 years ago, Jennifer. We met in college. I was working at a tech startup. 80-hour weeks, huge stress, but great money. Jennifer loved it. She loved being the fiancé of a success story, but the job was eating me alive. I was miserable. So, I quit. I took the job at your company because it offered balance. I thought she'd understand. I looked down at my hands. She didn't. She gave me the ring back 2 weeks later. said she couldn't marry someone with no ambition, someone content to be average. That's not a lack of ambition, Adriana said softly. That's self-awareness. That is knowing what makes you happy, maybe. Or maybe I'm just making excuses. I sighed. Either way, I've been here ever since. It's not an exciting life, but it's mine. Silence stretched between us, comfortable this time. Then, Adriana spoke, her voice barely audible. That's why I came here tonight. Well, one of the reasons. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? She set her mug down with deliberate care. I didn't just drive around aimlessly. I went home first, to my empty apartment with the perfect view and the perfect furniture. And I realized I was jealous. Jealous. Of who? Of you. I stared at her. Me, yes, you, Garrett. Because you are the only person in that entire office building who treats me like a human being. Everyone else sees the CEO. They see power. They see a paycheck. But you hold the elevator door. You ask me good morning, and actually wait for the answer. Last month, when I was working late, you stopped and asked if I was okay. Do you remember? I did. She had looked so lonely behind that glass wall. I remember, I said. No one else asked, she whispered. And I realized tonight, you have a life that makes sense. You chose peace over power. And standing in my empty penthouse, I realized you were the only person I wanted to talk to. The only person who might actually understand. She stood up, and I stood with her. We were only a few feet apart now. The early morning light was just starting to turn the sky gray outside. I'm saying. She continued, the words rushing out now. That I looked up your address, because I needed to see what real life looked like. And because I felt safe with you. Adriana, I didn't know what to say. She reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and placed her palm on my chest, right over my heart. I can feel your heart racing, she whispered. So maybe I'm not the only one feeling something here. She wasn't wrong. The pull was magnetic, terrifying, real. I feel it too. I admitted, my voice rough, but I'm terrified. You're my CEO. If this goes wrong, I don't just lose a relationship. I lose my livelihood. I can't afford to be reckless. She nodded slowly, tears catching in her lashes. So what do we do? We're careful, I said. We don't figure this out at 5 a.m. when we're both raw and hurting. We take time. We think. She closed her eyes, leaning into my touch for just a second. Okay? Careful. I can do careful. Share 2235 The Secret and the Shift. Monday morning arrived with the typical Portland gray drizzle. I got to work early, but my mind was a fog. Had I really held the CEO's hand in my living room? Had she really told me she was lonely? At 10:15, a notification buzzed on every screen in the office. Mandatory all-hands meeting. The conference room was packed. Adriana walked in, and she was perfect. Navy suit, flawless makeup. The armor was back on, but when she stood at the podium, I saw the tiny crack in the veneer. The way her knuckles turned white gripping the wood. Thank you all for coming, she announced. Whitmore Analytics has been approached by Meridian Tech with an acquisition offer. The room exploded with whispers. An acquisition. That meant change, layoffs, chaos. No decisions have been made, she said, her voice commanding the room. But I promise you, any deal will prioritize employee protection. As the meeting ended, she scanned the crowd. Her eyes locked onto mine. Garrett Hayes, she called out. Could you stay a moment? I have a question about the quarterly projections. It was a professional cover, but my heart hammered. The room emptied. The door clicked shut, And suddenly, the CEO was gone, and the woman from my living room was back. "How are you?" she asked quietly. "I should ask you that. That was a big announcement." "I meant what I said Saturday," she cut in. "I know you need time, but pretending nothing happened isn't going to work for me. I need to know, am I alone in this? Did I imagine the connection? This was the crossroads. I could lie. I could play it safe. "You're not alone," I said. "I felt it too. But look at us. You're selling a company. I'm trying to pay rent. We are on different planets. So we build a bridge," she said simply. "I need to think," I said. She nodded. "Take all the time you need. But Garrett, I'm not your axe. I'm not going to walk away because you aren't chasing a title. I see you." That night she texted me. Friday night, 7 p.m. Grenstone Coffee, neutral ground. I went. Of course I went. Over black coffee. She told me she was tired of being a coward in her personal life. She told me she respected me, my integrity, my kindness, and we made a pact. We would try, but we would be careful. No office scandals. No rushing. For the next 3 months we lived a double life. At work, professional nods. Outside of work, we were falling in love. We went to hole-in-the-wall Italian restaurants where no one knew her name. We walked by the river in the rain. She told me about her childhood. I told her about my brother. I learned that beneath the CEO title, she was funny, insecure about her cooking, and desperate for a simple life. And she learned that beneath my average, accountant exterior, there was a man who would do anything to make her smile. Har 30-100 or 30-80-100 and the sacrifice and the proposal. Then came the shock. 3 months later, the acquisition went through. And Adriana did the unthinkable. She announced she was stepping down, not taking a board seat, not staying on as a consultant, leaving. "I'm starting a small consulting business," she told me over dinner the night before the news broke. "Helping small business owners. It's what I've always wanted to do." "Are you sure?" I asked, stunned. "You're giving up the empire." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I've spent 20 years building someone else's definition of success. Now, I want to build my own. And part of that is being able to be with you without hiding." That night, standing outside my apartment building, I kissed her for the first time. It wasn't a movie kiss. It was better. It was the seal on a promise. She moved in 6 months later. My small apartment suddenly filled with her books, her expensive coffee maker, next to my cheap one, and her laughter. One Tuesday evening in April, I stood in the kitchen watching her try to make toast. She had burned it 3 times. The smoke detector was threatening to go off, and she looked so frustrated, so beautiful, wearing one of my old shirts. And I just knew, marry me, Adriana. She froze the butter knife in mid-air. She turned slowly, eyes wide. "What did you say?" I said, "Marry me. I don't have a ring right now. I wasn't planning this. But watching you battle that toaster, I realized I want to watch you burn toast for the rest of my life. I want the boring Tuesdays. I want the hard days. I want you." She dropped the knife. It clattered into the sink. Tears streamed down her face. Happy tears this time. "Yes," she whispered. "Absolutely yes. We didn't want a spectacle." She had done the power wedding before, and it was miserable. We chose a botanical garden in June. Just 40 people. My brother flew in. Her real friends came. We wrote our own vows. Hers broke me. "You knocked on my door." I told her at the altar. Had I opened it terrified? "But you taught me that playing it safe isn't the same as being alive." And she answered, "You gave me permission to be human." You showed me that success isn't a title. It's having someone to laugh with on a Tuesday evening. Thank you for opening the door. 6 months after the wedding, I woke up at exactly 5:00 a.m. to a knocking sound. My eyes flew open, but this time the knock wasn't on the front door. It was on our bedroom door. I sat up, confused. The bed beside me was empty. "Come in?" I called out, my voice thick with sleep. The door creaked open. Adriana stood there. She was wearing her silk robe, holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee, and grinning like a Cheshire cat. "Good morning, husband," she chirped. "What are you doing?" I laughed, rubbing my eyes. "Why are you knocking on our own bedroom door at dawn?" She walked over and sat on the edge of the bed, handing me a mug. "Because," she said softly, "exactly 18 months ago today, I knocked on your door at 5 a.m., and you opened it. That knock changed my entire life. I wanted to commemorate it." I pulled her close, smelling the coffee and her perfume, the best smell in the world. "You're ridiculous," I said. "I love you. I love you too." She nestled into my shoulder. "Do you remember what you thought that morning?" "I thought the world was ending," I admitted. I was terrified. "And yet," she said, "you let me in." We sat there as the sun began to rise, turning the room gold. "I have a meeting today," she said excitedly. "A woman starting a catering business. I get to help her build her dream. It's so much better than the boardroom, Garrett. I'm actually happy. I know you are. I can see it." "There's one more thing," she said, her voice turning serious. "I've been thinking about our future. We talked about travel, about the house. But I want to know what you really want, even the scary stuff." "I want to travel," I said. "Japan. Italy, if you're open to it, maybe kids. Someday. I know you focused on your career before, but..." She took a deep breath. "I'm 44. The window is tiny. But I want to try. I want the option. You showed me I don't have to choose between a life and a career." I hugged her tight. "Then we'll try. No pressure. Just us." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. "Happy anniversary of the day we met properly." Inside was a framed photo of us at the wedding, laughing hysterically. Engraved on the bottom were the words, "The family we choose." "The door we open. It's perfect," I said. "We are perfect," she corrected. "Burnt toast and all." Sometimes life knocks on your door at 5 a.m. when you least expect it. It comes in the form of disaster, or tears, or a crisis, and opening that door is the scariest thing you can do. But sometimes, if you are brave enough to turn the lock, you find everything you never knew you were missing. The CEO who knocked on my door didn't just turn my life upside down. She turned it right side up for the first time.